Thank you for tuning in to episode 3 of Newsflash, powered by ClassicCars.com and The Journal, the show where we cover the automotive car news from the week prior. I'm your host, Jeff Sutton, and today we'll be covering a multitude of topics, including the 20th anniversary Volkswagen Golf R. We have the next 2 iterations of the last call cars from Dodge. Williams F1 is developing a hypercar platform, and some additional announcements. Stay tuned for the rest. Starting with our first article, Toyota has announced pricing for the 2023 Corolla GR. GR, of course, stands for Gazoo Racing, which is the performance side of Toyota. So this comes based off the fact that we're getting a performance version of the Corolla, which is basically a performance version that we didn't get of the Yaris. So this Corolla features the same 300 horsepower, 1.6 liter 3-cylinder that we found in the Yaris that was available overseas and is now going to be coming to the US. So prices vary depending on which model you want, as there are going to be 3 models available. Starting with the sort of base MSRP, so to speak, is called the Core model. This model starts at $36,995 and is basically available with all of your basic attributes, but doesn't have any special features or any special cosmetics, interior options, anything like that, but features a standard wide body and sort of appearance package. Then moving on to the middle range, we have what's called the Circuit package, which is $43,995, and this starts to get some more of the performance goodies. Here we start to see the Torsen limited slip differentials, along with a carbon fiber roof and some other interior packages that change and sort of suede that go in a bit of a different direction to improve with more upgrades, along with an upgraded tire options and other things like that, essentially. Moving on from there, the last and final top option comes in at a whopping $51,995. So that high number there is what's called the Morizo package. That's spelled M-O-R-I-Z-O. So maybe Morizo, I'm not sure how to pronounce it really, but aside from that, that's the name of the package. So this package is a very limited package. It's going to be limited to 200 units, but it's going to be the high performance, essentially track focused version of the car. This car weighs 106 pounds less than the other models of the car. It of course has all of the options that you would find that get offered in the Circuit package and then some, including a rear seat delete, and it gets the option of Michelin Sport Cup 2 tires just to make it a little bit more sticky. The car also features an additional 22 foot-pounds of torque available at your essentially pedal for a total available amount of 295 foot-pounds of torque to match that 300 horsepower. Along with that, we also see some other package options and some different interior options that make it just a little bit lighter, and we see a closer ratio 6-speed manual transmission also available in this model. So while that model is probably going to be sold out almost immediately, I would guess, being that it's very focused and, you know, it may not appeal to everybody, especially when you start to look at the price differences, because at this point we're almost 20,000 more than what the base model starts out at. One of the things I do want to point out is that the Core model, which starts at that $36,995, is actually available with some upgrades. So let's say you want a base model, but you want some of the upgrades like the limited slip differential, you can actually add that on for $1,180, and therefore you can still get a cheaper model and save a little bit of money. That's assuming you can order it that way, or even find one at your dealership that's not fully upgraded. Our next article comes from Volkswagen, as Volkswagen has just announced the 20th anniversary Golf R. These are going to be limited in 1,800 units for all of North America, so that includes our neighbors up in Canada and of course us here in the US. This is a pretty interesting model, and it's not just a cosmetic model with some extra badging, as there are actually some performance upgrades. So much so, in fact, that the performance upgrades actually led to a 4-second faster lap time around the Nürburgring. Now, that doesn't sound like a ton, but 4 seconds is generally a pretty fast lap time, but at the same time, you have to remember that the Nürburgring is a pretty long course, so the actual time ended up somewhere in the 740s, I want to say. So that's a pretty long lap. So 4 seconds is of course faster. This model comes out at about 315 horsepower with some help to some tuning and some other tweaks that have been done to the car as well. The anniversary, of course, is paying homage to all of the all-wheel drive versions of the Golf. As we know, the Golf's been around for actually a very long time. This is specifically specifically paying homage to the all-wheel drive cars, which goes back to the R32 Golf that came out in 2002. So that's pretty cool. The car has a lot of cosmetic stuff that's on the interior and exterior of the car that of course pays homage to sort of show that you have a special 20th anniversary edition car. If that's not enough for you, they're also limited to some specific colors, and they're gonna have some special mirror caps, just like we saw with the launch edition Supra. So what's gonna happen here is there's gonna be 3 main colors available. You can get the car in black, blue, or white. The black and white cars will have blue mirror caps, and if you get the lapis metallic blue car, then that's gonna come with black mirror caps. So those cars are gonna be available. Pricing starts at around $45,000, and of course, you add $1,000 if you want the automatic transmission, as you can also get the 6-speed manual in these cars, which is a US only option for these cars, which I think is pretty cool, because now we've seen 2 different German manufacturers, both Porsche and Volkswagen, that only offer the manual transmission in the US, which is pretty cool. So there's that. Next, in news from Dodge, Dodge has unveiled the 3rd and 4th versions of what they're referring to as the last call cars. In case you didn't see it in the last episode, the last call cars are essentially Dodge paying homage to the last of the V8 as a sort of swan song before they move on into their generation of EV muscle. So these are specifically, it's essentially one package, but both available for the Charger and Challenger, counting as 3 and 4, as opposed to the last time where we saw 2 different packages, one for the Challenger, one for the Charger. So this time around, they're called the 2023 Scat Pack Swingers. And again, like I said, it's available for both cars. Essentially what they're gonna do is they're gonna build 1,000 Challengers and 1,000 Chargers. Half of those, so 500, are gonna be in Sublime Green, and the other half are gonna be in Knuckle White. And of course, these cars also feature some green accents, along with what Dodge is calling Gold School colors to go along with it. Kind of a play on words, kind of dumb if you ask me, but that's what some of the badging and the trim and even the wheels is gonna be, which to me is gonna look pretty good. Typically anything like green with gold usually goes together pretty well, and then white with gold, of course, you can pretty much put anything with white. So there's that. So these are gonna feature some special accents and things like that. The green is a 2-tone green, so it's got one color, Sublime Green, and a different color for some of the decals and badges that you'll typically find on it, similar to what we saw with some of the other last call cars. So there's that. Basically, the only thing that's different this time around is all of the cars for sale are all wide bodies, versus the last time around we saw that some colors were wide bodies and some colors were the regular narrow bodies, but all of these cars are going to be fully loaded Scat Packs, even with the Premium Plus package, in addition to the special badges and decals that are kind of forcing it to be collectible. And as much as most people say when you build something to be collectible and rare, it won't be, they're not building that many of these, and knowing the muscle car market, odds are people are going to hold on to these. We're going to see some low mileage examples, you know, start to surface in 20 to 30 years, maybe even less. Like we saw, we can see some of the SRT8 models from like the 2010s and stuff still come up for the Dodge Chargers and Challengers, and they'll ask for a bit more money. So who knows what the collectible future for these cars could look like, especially with the edge of gasoline on the way out, which is pretty interesting. I will say, I am kind of disappointed. So we've now seen 4 out of the total 7 that Dodge is going to be revealing. So that means we're going to see 2 more before SEMA comes out. That's when they're going to unveil the last one. I can't imagine the next 2 are going to be really any different from what we've seen so far. Mostly just cosmetic packages on fully loaded Scat Pack cars. It would be nice that if the car they're unveiling at SEMA has a little bit more something to offer, because for now, to me, I just see a bunch of cars that are going to get hiked up at dealerships and they're going to ask for a lot of money. So there's that. Williams Advanced Engineering, as in Williams F1, has just unveiled something we thought we'd never see from them. They have unveiled a 2,000 horsepower EV hypercar platform, which is now available for sale to work in partnerships with them. And while that sounds like something that there might not really be a market for, you'd be surprised, as they already have their first customer. The platform is actually rated for up to 2,212 horsepower with everything that they've built it for, and they're already doing business with a company called Deus, which is an Austrian startup company that is already working on their hypercar, the Vienne. Now, basically what's going to happen here is Williams builds the rolling chassis and then sends it over to the company, and the company does the rest of the work, designing the bumpers, making sure it meets all the other regulations and whatnot. Now, Williams provides this rolling chassis, which is actually really impressive. So the chassis has a special sort of mounting system that allows it to keep that supercar silhouette profile, or hypercar, I should say. What happens is most electric cars these days days actually have a pretty flat bottom, and that's where they store all the batteries. Now what happens is that makes the car sit up a little bit higher. So what Williams has done is they have put all the batteries essentially behind the cabin. So what that means is the cabin now sits a little bit lower, and then the battery weight is in more a centralized position in the car, and that means this car is more akin to what you would say for a mid-engine hypercar, so to speak, in terms of the sort of weight balance and setup of the car, which I think is pretty cool, seeing as some of these, characteristics of cars don't change even as we go from internal combustion to electric, whether you agree with it or not. That being said, the platform's incredibly quick. As Williams says, the platform's capable of a range of 280 miles, and it can do 0 to 60 in less than 2 seconds with a top speed of 248 miles per hour. So that is quite a platform. And I just want to remind you, this isn't the first time we've seen Williams step out of something that is Formula One in their general wheelhouse, as they actually did something with Singer vehicle designs when they worked on the lightweighting and dynamics study, building on one of the Singer Porsche cars that we see that get unveiled. So pretty cool. It's cool to see Williams really stepping into this engineering side of them. I kind of like some of the cool stuff they do, and it seems like they're always on the leading edge of whatever they're working on. Next, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be noting on some quick news topics that may not justify a whole article, but are definitely worth talking about. First off, Jeep has made a very bold statement saying that they want to be the first into the EV space in leading the way for SUVs in EV, essentially hybrids, and getting everything out in that way. So they've actually unveiled a trailer that shows us what are going to be some of the next electric models from Jeep. We know that we have the electric Avenger Jeep, which is going to be coming here shortly, and we've also seen the Recon model, which has been available, and even a electric version of the Wagoneer called the Wagoneer S. So now we know that Jeep is wanting to be the sort of head of this electric push, which I think is a little bit weird. I would really expect a lot of the luxury companies to head that way, but it does seem a little weird to see Jeep heading in that direction. However, we have seen the Jeep 4xe has already come out, which is actually a hybrid with a 4-cylinder. It's kind of an interesting vehicle in its own right. It has a 2-liter hybrid capable of 21 miles on electric only. Kind of a weird vehicle, but we'll have to see where Jeep takes it next. And in that news, we've also seen 2 cars are starting to be delivered. One is Europe only for now, and the other is here in the US. Starting with the Europe only one, the Volkswagen ID Buzz, which is actually based on the ID4 platform, is that vehicle that you've seen probably in some of the SEMA articles and other vehicle releases that looks really similar to the Volkswagen Bus. These are starting to arrive in Europe in both the MPZ version and, of course, with the Cargo Bus version. I think it's pretty exciting to see these start to get delivered. They do a good job of fitting what Europe sort of looks for in terms of their buses and their vans and sort of support vehicles, because it'd be good for a lot of businesses. So it's pretty exciting to see those come out. And from what I understand, we should be getting to take a look at those in the future here in the US. In more exciting news here in the US, we're starting to see the delivery of the manual transmission Supras. Now, before I get started, don't get too excited, as the 4-cylinder cars are not available. Those are still automatic only, but if you want a 6-cylinder Supra, you can buy a manual transmission now. They should be available at your local Toyota dealership, but if you're looking for the M91 MT, which is the special version, I should say A91 MT, the special version, those are limited production units, and those are going to demand a higher MSRP of about $54,000. So you may have to fork over a little bit more cash, and there may even be a dealer markup on some of those cars, but don't worry, you can still buy the base 3.0 and the 3.0 Premium with a manual or automatic transmission if you decide to do so. That's the end of episode 3 of Newsflash, and as a teaser for next time, don't forget that the Ferrari Puro saying, that means purebred SUV, is going to be unveiled on the 13th, and we know that the 7th generation pony car, the Mustang, is getting unveiled on the 14th in Detroit. So make sure you tune in for next week's episode of Newsflash to stay up to date on all of the news. As always, let me know what you think about these articles in the comments below, and if you want to read the articles for yourself, we'll have those linked in the description for you. If you could throw us a like, we'd really appreciate it, and get subscribed as you don't miss these every Saturday. With that, thank you so much for watching.